I'm currently 29 years old, but my story starts way back. When my mother was 37 years old, she got involved with a 64-year-old man. He was much older than her, had 7 children, including one who had passed away, and several grandchildren as well. He was a man who was very financially stable and lived a very comfortable life. And then my mother got pregnant by him and had me. From my vague childhood memories, I feel like my mother never really liked me. She did what had to be done, but affection, love, care, attention I got from my father. On top of everything, my father gave me the world. I never lacked for anything, quite the opposite. If anything, I had more than enough. And then when I was still little, about 4 or 5 years old, my father died. And I was very little, and I didn't get to have the moments, that a daughter would have with her father. And he left a very generous inheritance for all of us. And that's when my mother started living her life. She was still young, so she would always leave me at my aunt's house. She would go out, she would have fun. She wanted to live her life, and she didn't pay much attention to me. She didn't cater to me. She was harsher with me. Our relationship was a failure, it was a disaster. And when I was a little older, around 13 or 14 years old, my mom started having a relationship with a guy. And this guy, he kept showing off with the money my dad had left. He kept bragging, he kept showing off, and he hated me. We didn't have a good relationship at all, and I thought his behavior was ridiculous, and I thought it was ridiculous that my mom would make excuses for the situation. And she would make him comfortable, and that irritated me too. And at that time, the one who received my benefits was my mom, because I was underage. There was no way I could, right? And he would fight with me, but he loved the money that was deposited into my mom's account, which was my money. And that made us argue even more. More yelling, more fighting, until there came a moment when I was at home with my friend. We were taking a shower, teenage stuff. We went into the bathroom together. And my friend saw my stepfather spying on us in the bathroom. And at that moment, she got really scared. And I, of course, have always been a very reactive girl. I went downstairs right away. I got there and told my mom. I told my mom, of course she didn't believe me, and she started arguing with me, saying that I just wanted to cause trouble because I didn't like him. She said I just wanted a reason to fight and make them break up because that's how I am. And then we started arguing, me and him, and at that moment he made my mom choose between me or him. She said, "Who do you choose?" And of course my mom chose him. And then she sent me to live with her sister, somewhere else. And so I went. At the time, I was so angry, I grabbed a backpack, I took my clothes, I took my stuff, and I went to my friend's house. I stayed at my friend's house. The whole situation was really upsetting for me. I didn't want to stay under the same roof as them, in the house my dad left me. So I came to live with my aunt. At my aunt's place, my aunt lived alone. And there it was absolute peace. There, we used to talk, we had coffee together, we got along really well, we talked about life, we talked about everything, and there I grew up, right? We were about 14. When I was about to turn 18, I told you a few times that I saw my mom, because during that time, my mom, she visited us more during the holidays. Her visits to our house, my aunt's and mine, were very brief. And honestly, I didn't really care if she came or not because we didn't have much to talk about. We didn't have much to talk about. Our conversations didn't go anywhere. So for me, she didn't need to come visit me. But when I was about to turn 18 during one of those visits, I mentioned that I would like to go back to my hometown when I turned 18. And she was kind of like, no, totally against it. Like if it were up to her, I would still be living at my aunt's house to this day. But obviously, I came of age. I turned 18, I kissed my aunt goodbye, and I said, I'm going after what's mine. I went back to my house. Obviously, when we got there, it was a really difficult relationship. And then I demanded that from the moment I turned 18, the money would go into my account. My mom had no reason to get my pension. There was no reason for it to go into her account. It was mine. The money was mine. Another thing, the house my dad left me. I had lived away, yes, but now I was a woman, an adult woman, and I wanted what was mine. Well, then, my mother had to transfer it because by law there was no reason for her to keep receiving my pension. She transferred the payments to my account, which incredibly. After so many years of love, the two of them started fighting, my stepfather and my mother. And they started fighting. Fighting. I already knew it was because he wanted the money. And he didn't have the money anymore, right? That my mother had. And then the two of them started fighting. Long story short, he broke up with my mother. Dad, look at how much he loved her. Strange, right? But then they broke up, which for me was really good because I wanted my mother, to find someone who had, I don't know, who wasn't the kind of person that man was. Well, then it ended up being just my mom and me living alone in my house, but we fought a lot. There were a lot of fights, and since the house was mine, she ended up having to leave my house, so goodbye. The house really is mine, and I wasn't going to leave. I stayed. She was the one who had to go. She left. And I started living alone. I was still young. If you stop to think about it, people think like this. You turn 18. Now, like some switch flipped in your head, and boom, you're an adult, you're mature, you know everything about life. And actually, from 17 to 18, it's just a transition, you know? Like it's just a small step. So it's a process. I was still young, even though I fought for what was mine, for my rights. That was something that had been in my heart for many years, since I was little. And also, the people around me always told me that, because that's my right, and they took that away. Just a detail. When I lived with my aunt, my mom would send her child support too. She sent money, like money to help cover my expenses. It was pretty generous, really good too. So even though the money was mine, the things my mom would give me, she didn't give me all my money. She made sure I didn't lack anything, but she didn't give it to me because it was my right. That's why I wanted it. I started living on my own. I was living alone and getting my money. Inside my house, I fell hopelessly in love with a man. I fell hopelessly in love with him. And he became a great friend of mine. Someone I could laugh with. We talked, we treated each other well, and he was a really good friend of mine. And in the end, I think that for the first time in my life, I had someone who truly loved me. You could see it in the sparkle in his eyes, how much he was in love with me. And I was too madly in love with him. But that kind of love, like he was my first love. It was something kind of like much stronger than us. A really strong emotional dependency. My father died when I was very young. So that love, that affection, that care I expected from my father, maybe I found it in his arms. And it was something like really amazing. But after a few months of our relationship, he introduced me to drugs. And that's when we started using them. It was cocaine. Every time we used it, we fought. And then our relationship started to become a mess because he was practically living with me. And every day we were together. I lived alone. I wanted him to stay with me. I didn't want to be alone. I was really needy. So, yes, I wanted him to be there with me. And that's when we started using drugs. And it was really complicated. And then we would fight. And sometimes he'd get carried away and start imagining all kinds of things. Yeah, over any little thing. And there was this thing like disappearing, gone, vanishing. And I would spend the whole weekend crying at home, suffering, because he left me to use drugs on the street, you know? And then he would come back and then he would ask for forgiveness. He admitted that it was wrong, that he shouldn't have done it, that it was stronger than him. Right, he admitted that it wasn't cool, but then soon enough he was using again, and sometimes I would fall too. I would use too. I wanted to show him I was with him no matter what. Whatever he did, I'd go along, like being loyal. If he was going down, I was going too. You get it? Come on, let's go. We're in this together, just us two. And like, I even remember moments when We like used to fight. He used drugs, we fought, and then the next day we'd sit down, look at each other, and talk about our future, about our stuff. And like we would drink chimarrón together. And you could see the love we had for each other, you know? And I believe that's what kept me in the relationship for so long, friendship. And I started to realize that when we were sober, clean, we were fine. But when we used drugs, we fought. And like, it sounds crazy, right? Just hearing myself say it. It seems obvious. That's it. Drugs do that. And not using drugs makes everything okay. But for those who are using, it's very hard to have that self awareness, to understand that it's this. Like drugs feel good, it feels good in the moment, it feels nice. You fight, you don't see it, you're disconnected from yourself to realize it. You'll notice more, but only the next day when you're okay, and you don't see the weight of all this, and then you just keep going, keep going. It turns into a snowball. And then I suffered over and over again. It was really hard until one day I was at home like that, suffering, and I started having suicidal thoughts. And it was so heavy that I took like a razor blade to like cut my wrists, you know? It was really heavy. And then a friend of mine caught me like that. She shook me like that. She shook me. She said, "Are you going crazy? Stop doing that." He left. You have to leave too. You have to live too. You can't fall into this. And it was the same thing. She even like, she opened my eyes right there, you know? I said, wow, she's right. I needed to. That day, I took a shower, I got ready, I stopped crying, we just went out and we had fun and we did so many cool things and fun things. We enjoyed it so much that I only came back on Sunday after him. And then that day when I got back on Sunday after him, that's when he felt it. Oh, it hurt. Wow. But it hurt him. It hurt deep down in his soul, you know? He felt really bad. And then he talked to me again. So we could, you know, see what we would do. But honestly, it didn't help. Soon enough, it was happening again. We were fighting again. Then, in one of those fights, I got tired. I got tired. I said, "I don't want this anymore. I'm tired. Go away. Take everything that's yours and go away." And he, "No, for God's sake, don't do this. It's my life that's leaving. Go away." And he took his things and left. During that time, we did. We were apart for a while, you know? We were separated for 3 months so I could get back on my feet, you know? So I could understand myself a little after everything I'd been through, right? Who I was becoming. And then he came back. He tried to be with me again, and he came back a totally different person. And he said the same thing like that. He changed completely. He said things he had never said before. He showed me that he had matured, that he had changed, and I gave him that chance. And then he became so romantic, seriously. He became so romantic that his clinginess also started to annoy me. And then I started to realize that maybe I didn't love him that much anymore. That it wasn't about him anymore, it was about me. That it wasn't about the way he acted anymore, it was about the way I reacted, you know? And that wasn't good for me. So it didn't last long. The first conversation we had, he used again, he went back to drugs, he did it again, he disappeared on me. He did it again, so I said, "That's it, goodbye." You get it? It's just goodbye. And that's when we broke up for good. We ended our relationship. For a long time, he followed me, he stalked me, he even went after me in another city. You know, he would text me. He would come to my door. He would call. He would cry. He would talk to everyone around me. He found out that I had met another guy who was a really good guy from a good family, you know, a guy who had his life together, a decent guy. He broke into that guy's house and he trashed the whole place. He destroyed the entire house. Then he disappeared, you know? It was very disturbing for me over time with all those things he kept doing. He would end up disappearing, you know, and I started having more time to live my own life. Over time, I started to get my head straight. I decided that I wanted to go to college, you know. I met someone very dear, and today, currently, I am 29 years old. I have a degree. I have a child. I have a husband. I have a completely stable life with an amazing person, totally different from him. As for my mother, she and I keep in touch, kind of at a distance. Like it's something that doesn't work, it's a dysfunctional relationship. Yes. And my ex-boyfriend, what I hear about him is that he hasn't been seen sober since. that he really got into drugs, that he's unrecognizable, that he's very thin. Like his life was ruined, you know? Many, many times after we broke up, I kept thinking, what if drugs didn't exist? Could we have been happy because we had such a pleasant friendship, you know? And I also wonder if I had stayed with him, would I also be lost? Would people today never have seen me sober again? I'm glad I was strong. I'm glad I asked for help. I'm glad I was helped, and I'm glad I got out of that life. But let me tell you something. Sometimes what starts with pleasure and fun turns into the biggest destruction of your life. Hi, how are you, McCades? Is everything okay with you? Today I'm bringing you the story of an heiress, right? Of a girl who had a financially stable life. But emotionally, we can see there are gaps, right? There are holes, and many times toxic relationships. It's part of attachment, an addiction, any kind of addiction, right? Hers was cocaine, but many other people get addicted to other things too. And it ends up becoming a huge dependency to the point of transforming a person. I'm really happy that she got out of that situation, that she found the strength. But I want to say, if you need help today in Brazil, we can ask for help, okay? It seems like if we call the police, for example, we're going to get arrested. But did you know that if you're having a medical emergency, feeling really unwell, having trouble breathing or something like that, you can also ask the police for help. So you can be taken to the hospital. Today, Brazil's public health system provides long-term treatment for people who have this kind of behavior. And we also have CAPS. Right? It provides psychosocial care for alcohol and drug issues. The treatment is completely free, okay? Here in Brazil, there is help. People have programs. And there's also Narcotics Anonymous, as well as inpatient treatment too. So sometimes it seems like being admitted, like asking for help at a UBS, which is a local public health clinic. Or if you need emergency care, right? So you can get treatment. It's a bad thing, it's an ugly thing, but actually it's one of the most beautiful acts you can do for yourself. It's an act of self-love. It's an act of awakening. Asking for help to stop using drugs is a step toward growth. Wow. I think it's a really beautiful thing to do. And if you're close to people and you can talk about it, introduce the subject, you know, in a gentle way, like, hey, asking for help isn't always wrong. People tell me that, and it's really important. We need to tell these people, like, do you want to use? You don't feel ready to stop? That's okay. But if one day you feel like it, don't be afraid to ask for help, right? And spreading this information is really important because we need to support these people, to help them, because it's so much more than just an issue. It's a personal issue. It's a health issue. So if you also know someone who has gone through something like this, right? Or a story of inheritance, which I didn't even talk much about, right? About the daughter's right to the money, because I believe she got that sorted out well. The first part of the story is also a very fun part, right? Her being able to get what belongs to her, fighting for what is hers. I know several people who lose out. So, houses and money. Because the mother received it, spent everything, and when the child turns 18, there's nothing left. There are so many sad stories out there too. Send me your story for the channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe, kisses, and see you in the next video.